In the small dusty village of Udinu, where the sun burned brighter than anywhere else, lived a 12-year-old girl named Neoma. Her name meant good mother, but life had given her little goodness. Her parents, Chike and Ngozi, were known not for wealth but for their endless quarrels and carelessness. Chike was a motorcyclist chasing money across towns, while Ngozi sold vegetables but spent most of her time gossiping and attending meetings. That left Neoma to care for herself and her younger brothers, Obinna and Somto. One Monday morning, the air was thick with the smell of roasted yam and charcoal smoke. Neoma rose early, swept the compound, fetched water, and bathed her brothers. Her mother yelled from the kitchen, "Obinna! Somto! You will make me run mad in this house." Chike ignored her, tinkering with his motorcycle outside. Neoma quietly packed her school bag. Her uniform was faded, her slippers torn, yet she made no complaint. Ngozi handed her some food and said, "Take your brothers to school. I must reach the market before Eddie takes my customers." Neoma nodded and began the long walk to school. At school, she was quiet and hardworking. Her teacher, Mr. Okeke, admired her discipline. But that day, during break, a strange man appeared at the school gate. He wore a brown shirt and carried a small black bag. "Are you Neoma Chike?" he asked. When she said yes, he smiled and said, "Your mother sent me. She said you should come home quickly. There's an emergency." Fear gripped Neoma. "What happened?" she asked. The man replied, "Something happened to your brother." In panic, she followed him, not thinking to ask her teacher. That was the last time anyone saw her at school that day. The man led her through a narrow path unfamiliar to her. As they walked, she realized they were going away from the village. "Uncle, this is not the way to my house," she said timidly. He ignored her. When she spoke again, he turned sharply and shouted, "Keep moving." Her heart pounded. When she tried to scream, he grabbed her and covered her mouth. "Be quiet. You'll see your parents soon," he hissed. Hours later, Ngozi returned home from the market. The compound was silent. She assumed Neoma had taken the boys to play. But when the boys returned alone and dirty, crying, she asked, "Where is your sister?" They said, "She didn't come home after school." Panic spread through Ngozi's heart. By nightfall, Chike and Ngozi ran from one compound to another, shouting Neoma's name. Neighbors joined with lanterns. The next morning, the village had organized a search party. They combed the bushes and streams, but she was nowhere to be found. Days passed. People whispered, maybe she followed a bad friend, or those parents never care for their children. Ngozi wept endlessly, but many said her tears came too late. 3 days later, a farmer named Okari walked through the forest at dawn. He heard a weak cry, "Help me." Following the voice, he found Neoma tied to a tree, trembling and weak. He carried her to the village. Ngozi rushed forward, crying, "My daughter." But Neoma looked at her blankly. Mr. Okeke asked gently, "Who took you?" She whispered, "He said my mother sent him." The village guards investigated and discovered that a group of men had been kidnapping children for rituals on trafficking. The man who took Neoma escaped, but others were caught later. Everyone thanked God for her survival, yet Neoma had changed. She became quiet, withdrawn, and fearful. Ngozi tried to cheer her with gifts and fruits, but Neoma only said, "That man looked familiar. You spoke to him once." Ngozi's face froze. It was true, she had met a man who promised to buy vegetables weeks ago. She had even given him change without realizing who he was. Her carelessness had almost cost her daughter's life. After the incident, the family began to fall apart. Chike blamed Ngozi for negligence, while she blamed him for never being home. Neighbors avoided them, whispering, "That's the Careless family." One day, after a heated argument, Chike packed his bag. If I wasn't struggling alone, our daughter wouldn't have suffered, he said, and left. Ngozi begged him to stay, but he didn't look back. Neoma's nights were filled with nightmares. She would wake up screaming, "Don't take me again." Ngozi would run in, hold her close, whispering, "You're safe now." But deep inside, Ngozi knew she wasn't. Her carelessness had destroyed her child's peace. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Neoma sat outside watching other children play. Her friend Amara asked, "Why don't you join us?" Neoma smiled faintly. "I'm not the same anymore." "What do you mean?" Amara asked. Neoma replied, "That day, I thought my parents would protect me. But they forgot me until it was too late." She stood up and walked away, leaving Amara speechless. Months passed, and though Neoma seemed to heal, her heart still carried scars. One day, Ngozi received a letter. Chike had been in an accident in the city and needed help. She panicked but had no money. No neighbor offered to help. Neoma heard her crying that night and said softly, "Mama, I'll go with you." They left the next morning in a borrowed car. At the hospital, Chike lay weak on the bed. He held Ngozi's hand. "I was wrong to leave. I couldn't face what happened to Neoma." Ngozi cried. "I was careless. I thought I was doing my best, but I failed." Neoma stood beside them quietly. Chike said, "My child, forgive us." She nodded slowly, then said, "I forgive you, but I can't forget. That man told me, they won't notice you're gone. Parents like yours forget things easily." The room fell silent. Those words pierced their hearts. After that, things began to change. Ngozi stopped gossiping and stayed home to care for her children. Chike sold his motorcycle and started a small shop so he could be with his family. It took time, but they rebuilt their bond. Neoma began smiling again and returned to school. Yet deep inside, she carried an invisible scar, the kind that changes how you trust the world. 2 years later, life seemed peaceful again. But one afternoon, Ngozi saw a man by the roadside, the same man who once took her daughter. He was thin and weak. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "Madam Ngozi, you still remember me?" She trembled. "You devil! You tried to destroy my family." The man replied bitterly, "I didn't do it alone. Someone sent me." Ngozi's eyes widened. "Who?" He whispered, "Ask your husband." Before she could react, a truck horn blared. The man turned to cross the road and was hit instantly. He died on the spot. That night, Ngozi told Chike what happened. He lowered his head. "It's true," he said softly. "I once borrowed money from some bad men. I didn't know they were involved in rituals. They came for Neoma to punish me." Ngozi screamed, "You caused all this." Chike fell to his knees, crying. "I didn't know." From that night, Ngozi couldn't live with him. She took her children and moved away. Chike lived with guilt for the rest of his life, haunted by the memory of his daughter's cry and his wife's tears. Years later, Neoma grew into a strong young woman. She began sharing her story with others, saying, "Sometimes, the people who should protect us are the ones whose mistakes hurt us most." But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means healing. Her story became a lesson for many. In life, carelessness can destroy what we love most. A single moment of neglect can turn into a lifetime of regret. Children need more than food and clothes, they need love, attention, and safety. Because once a wound like that opens, even time struggles to close it.